Well, welcome everyone to today's webinar on learning the Canary Excel add-in in 30 minutes. I have in front of you, an Excel worksheet, and what I'm going to do is go through our Excel add-in tool. So at the top, I have a Canary Labs ribbon bar opened up here. So if you have Canary installed on your machine and you're utilizing Excel, you'll notice that there'll be a Canary Labs ribbon bar. And there's different function groups on the ribbon bar I'm going to go through. So really just to dive down into it, the whole purpose of getting the Excel add-in from Canary would be to be able to just pull data out of the Canary Historian, whether that's raw data or process data, and putting that into an Excel sheet to utilize Excel's tools to analyze the data. And we have some good functions here that'll assist you with that. But the main core of the system is what you see here is the tag list. This is the function that allows us, if I select it, to be able to see a list of all the tags in the historian that maybe I would want to pick. Which tags do I want to pull data into my Excel sheet from? So it's real easy to search for maybe a group of tags. So we have our search path here. So this will allow me to see all the different views in the historian. So that's a whole nother subject on our virtual views. We'll assume everyone here today might have a little bit of understanding. There's other webinars will cover that, but these are my different views. I'm going to pick a substation view. This will give me, again, that view. I'll see the tags related to that specific view in an easy to understand format. And under that substation, I have different assets. These would be more like substation districts. So I'll pick Elm. So I know at the Elm district, I want to look for maybe temperature tags on all my transformers. So I can just do a search here and find any of those temperature tags. So there's 3 of them here. So I'll just go with these 3 tags. I mean, I can make a list of thousands of tags if I'd like to, but I'm going to make it easy to follow today. So I'm just going to say, okay, here's my list of 3 tags, and I'll say, okay. So I've created my tag list. Now, once I have my tag list established, I can start to analyze the data associated with my tag. So there's I would say there's two core functions. There's the raw data call and the process data call you can make. And we'll talk more about each of these. But between the tag list and these two, these are the 3 biggest functions you're going to use. Now there's some ancillary functions that I'll just cover here briefly. Once I have a tag list, I can pull in properties associated with those tags if I just want to analyze what kind of properties we're storing. So, for example, I'm just going to add my tag list down here again, and it'll pull that right in for me, my tag properties. Now, it automatically pulled in the properties, but I can actually open up my panel over here on the right where I can define the input range. So when you need to define an input range, it's as simple as highlighting the list of tags, and on the side panel here, I'm going to hit the set button, and that's what actually defines the range of tags we're analyzing. And there's always an output function, whether I want that to output vertically, so it just gives me a vertical list of the results. If I uncheck that and put that in a false, that would give me a horizontal output. I prefer the way I do my analysis to have a vertical, and that's what's actually defaulted. It's a true value for this. And then, where do I want this to output? So it put the output right here in cell B1. So that came through automatically for me because I actually had this set up prior to today. The same with the tag data context. So I can see the properties here. If I want to see maybe some data context up before I actually make the call to get my raw data or process data, I know what I'm getting myself into. I can use that particular function. So to use the tag data context function, I'm going to go ahead and open that up here. And yes, we'll go ahead and apply those changes. Oops. So on my tag data context, again, I can pick my input range. Okay, so maybe I want to just choose this tag list again and set that. And then I can pick my headers if I like the headers to show, and these are all my display fields. So these are the 4 different display fields that I'll see actual information on. And so I like to show those headers. And then do I want this to output vertically, true or false? And then where do I want that output location to go? So maybe I want the output location, right here, for example. Then I can set that, and all I have to do is say okay, and that'll bring it. What that does is that actually brings in the latest timestamp value, the latest quality score, along with the oldest timestamp. So I can understand how far back in history do I have data on those particular tags. So again, this is just I would say more of an ancillary type of function, between the properties and the context. I seldomly use this, but it's just a way maybe for an end user that doesn't have access to the raw data in the historian, and they kind of want to take a sample and see what properties and context there is. Great. Um, the same with when we get into the tag data fields or functions here. We'll cover raw and process data in just a second, but we also have a value at and a last value function. So when I'm utilizing that value at function, it's going to actually put in my tag list here. So it matches up here. Good. Okay. So what this will do then is it'll show me the timestamp, the value, and the quality currently, for example. Now, if I open up my value at function, I have a list of fields here where I can determine, when I say value at, what does that value at mean? Maybe it is right now, for example. So the top fields here are always the same throughout my panel, but when we're talking about the value at, I can actually pick a start date and a time, for example, or I can keep it more relative. So I can say, first of all, maybe a date I want to see starting at this date, and maybe at, what did it say, at 2 p.m., for example. I want to see moving forward in that direction back at 2 o'clock. What was the very first value? So I have two directions, obviously backward and forward. And then I can either find my first value, or I can put in other expressions here. I want to find any values greater than a certain number or have a certain quality score. You have all those different expressions, but I'll just keep it simple. I want to just see the first value moving forward after 2 p.m. for my three tags here. So if I just say okay, then I'll see exactly anytime after 2 o'clock. So we went about 1 minute and 5 seconds past 2 o'clock to get that first value on my first tag. My second tag, right at 2 o'clock, we had an update. And then finally, the third tag here, 10 seconds after 2, we had an update. So those are some of the ancillary functions. And finally, as well, just if I just want to see a last value, I can go to my last value column here, and again put my input range in. We'll just use that as the input range, and set my output. But this is just going to strictly, when I say okay, it's going to give me the last value, and it came through. So my very last value was actually, yeah, exactly. I thought I lost connection to my web server there for a second. So it's the last value was actually the previous value at. But that's, again, this is just allowing you to see how you can get some ancillary context around the raw data. So next, what I'd like to do is actually, I have another tab here. I want to pull in raw data. So the idea with raw data is I can choose on my side panel, I can pick, again, an input range. So again, based on my tag list. So if I go back to my first page, maybe I just want to use these three tags again. I can set that as my input range and then go to my next page here. And here I just want to basically just dump in raw data for a certain period of time. So I can pick a start date and time again. Now this can be relative because here I had it set up this where the ending time would be now at this moment in time, and we'd start 30 minutes prior till now. So what I'm looking for in this case would be all the data in the last 30 minutes for those three tags. And then I can do other things like my sort order, whether I want the timestamps to be descending or ascending, and then which type of display fields do I want to have, and do I want to show those as headers? So I may just want the timestamp as text and the value checked off. Now, obviously, maybe I want to see annotations, because we store the annotations like on the charts when you can add an annotation. If I wanted to pull those in as well, I could see the notes on those annotations. I'm just going to set my output location here, and we'll say okay, and that'll give me all the data. What I'm going to just do here real quick is we're just going to launch Excel again. And while I'm launching, I did want to mention, and actually, I think Dawn could put this in here for you. We have a new, I wanted to say this at the end of the webinar, but I'll say it now. We have a brand new site we call Canary Community. And that's a great place to go to see upcoming events like today's webinar. And also you can register to attend other, we have roadshow events coming up. We have one in Pittsburgh next week. So we do a 2-day training session there. And then we have, a live, I shouldn't say a live, but we have like a Q&A section. So if you ever have a question, you can go to the community and ask that question. And I'll pull this up at the end here as well. But now that I'm back up and running here, I'm going to redo my tag list again here. So I'm just going to, I'll use those same tags again. And I'll go to Elm and I'll just type in the tag I want to look for here. So there's my tag list. And I think right here, I'm just going to put in my raw data. So I'm going to go to my raw data function again. And we'll just select these 3 tags for the input range. And I'm just going to say, let's do now minus 1H. So I want to pull in an hour's worth of data, and we want it to fill in right here on cell number 5, A5. And we'll do that again. Much better. So what I'm going to do here is expand these columns out so we can see it. So now this is just a raw data dump I did the last hour. So you can see at the top here, here's the most recent timestamp for my first temperature tag at Elm Station 1. And here's the value column. So here's all my values. And here's the timestamp. Same for the next tag. Here's my timestamps and values. Now, that's just a simple raw data dump. I find most people, myself included, prefer to go the route of process data. So whenever I fill out that panel, it's creating an array formula. So I could really, if you know arrays, I could actually change the text inside of the array formula rather than using the panel on the side. But once it does output the results, the array starts right here in the very top left cell. So I can hit the clear button when I'm on that cell and it'll just clear out the results. So now what I want to do is I want to go to process data, because you can do a lot with the process data. So first of all, it's always the same concept, put in my input range. And now what I think I'd like to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to pick today's date, and I want to start at 12 a.m. here, let's say. Up till now, I would like to see what was the average temperatures, the average hourly temperature. So I'm going to set my output location. And so what I need to do then is, once I know which aggregate, which by the way, we have about 40 different aggregates, and I'm going to explain a little bit more about these, but you can pick from 40 different aggregates, but I'm going to use the time average aggregate first. And I want to see the aggregate interval for the past 1 hour. So I'll just put 1H here for the last hour, or I'm sorry, for the hour interval. So once I say okay, I can see on the hour, starting down here at the very bottom was 12 a.m. Here's my 3 tags. These are the average temperatures. So each hour going up till the most recent hour at 2 o'clock in Eastern time, this was the average temperatures. So that's how you can apply an aggregate to the data. That's one way. Now, let's say I would like to continue this and pull in some other process data. So now, again, same input range. You always got to remember that. And now I'm going to put my output range right here. Same thing as well. I want it horizontal. Now, instead of time average, let's just say I'd like to, let's go with maybe the maximum. I want to go with the maximum over each hour. What was the maximum temperature each hour? So I'm going to say, okay. So now you can see from 12 a.m. up till 2, these were the maximum temperatures. So for example, here was the max, it was 112.34 compared to the average for that same tag at 2 o'clock, it was 101. So we can see we had a peak, of 112, for example. So those are a couple common aggregates we can use. Now, if I'm, let's say, for example, I would like to come back and do one more thing here with our process data call. When whenever we're inputting in our range, so let me come back here and do the same range again. I have the ability where I can consolidate duplicate rows, and that's checked off by example. But the idea here is, and you see more so this with raw data. But if I'm say I'm looking for the data in my period of time, and there's a period of time where my data didn't change. Maybe it was a Boolean, for example. So these obviously are, they're doubles or integers or whatever. But if it's a Boolean and it's just in a running state for 3 hours, and I'm looking, or maybe it's been in a running state for 24 hours, and I have 1 hour intervals. Well, if it's always at a 1 for a reading, you would see it wouldn't show me all 24, in this case all 12. It would show me one row. Well, it would show me two. It would show me the first hour and then the recent hour, and there'd be an ellipse here letting me know that we've duplicated a bunch of rows. So that's just a way, if you don't want to have a lot of wasted viewing space, that's what the consolidate duplicate rows will do for you. Now you do have the ability as well with the display fields. I'm just looking at the timestamp as text and the value. But you can, I can highlight a certain display field and reorder it. So, now like the hex quality would be the first column if I wanted to see that. Or maybe the aggregate name, I want to select that and move that up. So you can use the up and down arrows to move your display fields in a particular order so they appear, the way that you want them to when you have your output results. Now that's process data. Now there's a whole lot you can do within it, which I want to kind of give you an idea though. When we talk about process data and using aggregates, I'm going to add a new sheet here. Under the general info, we have our aggregate list. So here, I'm just going to resize this. This is a list of all the aggregates that you would see over here in this drop-down menu. And it gives you the definitions. And a common question that comes up is, we see there's a time average 2, but there's also just a straight time average, and there's a total and there's a total 2. So when you see a 2 at the end of the aggregate, that's like the UA. These are OPC Foundation aggregates. So when they came out with the UA standard, this is kind of like the second version of the aggregates. This was more back when they had OPC. OPC HDA was one of the current go-to type of protocols. But the key difference is, if you look at the definition, say for time average 2, that's just saying we're retrieving the time weighted average data over the interval using simple bonding values. However, time average, same definition, but it's using interpolated bonding values. So just so you're aware, that's the difference between not having a 2 and having a 2 at the end. And that's an OPC Foundation rule. And really when we mean by interpolated versus simple, simple, they needed to change that for like when you do like a lot of regulatory reporting for the government. Because what simple bounding does, if you're looking at a range of data, say from 12 to 1, so at 12 a.m. and 00 seconds is the beginning, it's the start bound. If there's no data reading at that time, maybe the most recent data reading was at 11:59, and then after that it was at 12:01. Well, what happens is we average those two readings together to give us the 12 a.m. reading. So that starts that 1 hour period. But when we do an interpolated, that will take the most recent good data quality reading before and after that starting point of 12 a.m. and average it together, and then that's great. But the simple bounding rule, it'll take any data point, any reading before or after the starting point, even if it's a bad quality data reading, and it'll average those two together. And so that's the difference. That's just something that comes up quite a bit. So just so you're aware, interpolated versus simple, probably most of the time it doesn't make a difference. We recommend doing the 2 because that's the new UA aggregation method. So if you ever have questions on the aggregate list or what an aggregate does, you can see the definition here. Just a few other bits of information before we switch over to some questions here. We do have the option, you can see what version you're on. That'll show you your view service version and the client version. what that means is the view service is actually, this is the machine I'm connecting to get the data. So it's telling me that that data historian is on this version. And on my local machine, I'm using the most recent version as well of Canary. I'm on the same version on my machine for the Excel add-in. So there's no version mismatch, which doesn't typically matter, but in case you ever wonder what version you're on, you can access that here. But another nice thing is at the very in version 21.2, which is the one I'm using right now, we added a new function called Calculate Sheet. So by clicking this, I don't know if you noticed, it updated my most recent average here. So it just does a refresh of the screen. So it updates all the function call calculations and gives me the most recent values here. So that's what the Calculate Sheet function does. One other important piece of information is the set endpoint. Out of the box, when you open up Excel for the first time, it'll give you this little menu here. It's going to ask you, which historian am I connecting to? By default, it's going to say localhost. But if I wanted to connect to another Canary historian on my network, if it existed, which I have plenty here at the corporate office, I can pick a different Canary historian to connect to. So that's the first thing you have to determine. And then how are we going to authenticate to connect to that machine? We'll connect to the view service on that Canary Historian machine using one of three methods. If I choose Windows, it'll just actually automatically sign me in. It'll authenticate me to the Historian machine without manually putting in my username and password here. Or I could have it set that we want the users to have to manually authenticate before they can pull the data in. So that's what the set endpoint does. Now I know we've kind of moved through this rather quickly. There's so much you can do with the Excel add-in, but what I recommend is with anything in our system, you want to learn more about it. We have as I mentioned, we have our Canary community, but within the Canary community, say for example, you want to learn more about the Excel add-in than what you have already learned today. There's a Learn Canary section, and under the training opportunities, let me back up actually. Under the on-demand section at the bottom here, we have our Canary Academy. So this is a full training academy, has different courses. One of those courses happens to be the Canary Excel add-in. So you could choose that, for example, and you could begin the course, and it'll take you to within the academy where you need to register. It's free, and you can see all the different courses. Each course isn't very lengthy. You can probably get through this in about an hour and take a quiz at the end and get your certificate of completion. So this is a great place to go to follow up afterwards. But I'm going to switch over here. I believe we may have some questions. I just want to see if anything came in here that we need to cover. Okay, so someone did ask, can you give a quick overview about how to add tag database in the tag list? Yeah, so that's a great question. That really comes back to when we're doing a tag list. Go to my tag list here. So this is just pulling. So if you got to imagine an end user that really doesn't have access to the Canary Historian, they can't add tags or change logging sessions to pull in new data. So that new data appears here. But the idea is though that anything that's in the Historian, for example, this is my Canary Historian. I'll have access to all the tags. So I have a little over 1,300 tags in my Historian, and I can obviously go through each data set, or I can just do a search to find the tags I want. But you can't really do anything here to add tags to this list. That'll be done more on the admin side when you configure like OPC UA logging sessions or MQTT logging sessions to get data coming into the Historian. See if any other questions came in. So it looks like someone had mentioned they were on version 18.05. Okay, and they didn't have the input range. Yeah, so yeah, if you're not on a more recent version, your Excel will function a little differently. So I believe it was last year we added the tag list function, because what was happening, we used to let you just pull in as many tags as you wanted, and obviously our historian can handle millions of tags. Well, Excel can't handle millions of rows. There's a cap just over 1 million rows in Excel, and there were some issues people pulling in too much data into Excel for it to be able to process. So we did make it that you have to predefine your list before you can go ahead and start pulling data into Excel. Let's see, I think maybe another question. Okay, so there's still some question about simple bounding values. Is there any reference or information to get? Yes, on the OPC website, and what I can do is I will, at the end of this, once I get the recording, I'll email everybody who's attended a link to this recording, and I'll put in some other links. One of those will be a link to the OPC Foundation website that defines the simple bounding values and the interpolated bounding values. And they define it pretty well there. So I'll make sure that's provided as well afterwards. Don't think I see any other questions, and we're just about, maybe we do have a couple more here. Okay, so yeah, good question. What version enables the calculate sheet button? So you need to be on the latest version. It just came out just last month. It's version 21.2. So if you're a current Canary customer, be sure to reach out to your Canary representative, so you can upgrade if you'd like. You can email support@canarylabs.com to get that, and we'd be happy to help you with that. Okay. I think that's everything. If we missed any questions, like I said, I will be sure to send out some answers. And also, you can always contact us to meet with us one-on-one, and we can go through the Excel add-in in more detail on a more like a personal training, or any other questions you may have. You can always reach out to us. But I think we're out of time here today. I just want to thank everybody for joining, and hopefully this was helpful. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.